You are listening to the I Wish I Knew Stuff podcast with Mark and Nalo. They test things like news, culture, and other dumb stuff that they just wish they knew about. Subscribe to the channel and thanks for listening.
We usually just start off by recording and then doing whatever.
Stupid stuff like right now?
Yeah.
Nice.
Pretty much. I had to fix my microphone anyway because I need different microphone stands. There's this one microphone stand that is got like a bendy thing on it, and then I want to put the microphone actually on top of that, so I don't have to have it right in front of me.
Yes.
I can lean it over.
So
I might just buy another one of these mics too, so I have three of the the arms.
There you go.
I think that'll
three
be
arms
good.
So you can slouch. You can lean
You can
back.
just
I
chill
like the sound
me,
of
dude.
those mics like better than this mic. This is like a more expensive, nicer mic, but I don't like the sound of it better. As good as those ones.
I like this new setup more because I can just kick back.
Yeah, we used to have a tall table, like where you sit
With
in
a
stools.
stool table,
Yeah.
Hated it.
My back hurts so bad every time. You can't just podcast for an hour like that.
No.
This is way better.
Yep.
Mark is always tired.
I am.
Turd. How
Do you
does
get
that
up
go?
and do like plasma on Wednesdays or anything?
I was gonna, but I slept in this morning.
You
I usually get up
do
and
them?
do like 1,000 push-ups, though, so that's why I'm so tired.
That'll make you tired, for sure.
Yeah, well, 1,000 every day.
1,000 every hour.
Yep.
Every yow.
I do 1,000 push-ups an hour.
Yeah, if you don't do 24,000 push-ups a day, you're an idiot.
I do 1,000 push-ups an hour.
Can't.
That's pretty fast.
I can't.
Yeah, that would be. I'm just trying to. I'm trying to calculate that in my head of what would be that per minute. I mean, just on a daily gopher.
It'd be a lot
It would be.
more maths.
Yeah,
That's not quick maths.
No, that's definitely not quick.
Quick maths. Mark, say something. I need to turn you up, I think.
I have been saying a lot of things. Something.
Well, I mean, literally, I needed you to talk when I said to talk.
How about this?
That turned red.
that was a loud one.
What would you like me to say?
I don't know. I was going to turn you up, but now I just turned you all the way down.
I can do 1,000 push-ups a day.
How did tonight go?
Oh, it was dope. Carson was there, and I only wanted to punch him like twice.
Yeah.
I actually, it was fun this summer. I got to golf with his brother and his dad at the league up at Lake Hills, and that was a lot of fun. And so,
Nice.
yeah, I missed seeing him around all summer long.
Yeah, he's a turd.
Heck yeah. Did I tell you that he called me about his car?
Croissant?
Like an emergency. Yeah, he goes, Nate. And I was like, yeah? Like, I answered the phone. Hello? And he goes, Nate.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? He's like, Kate and I almost blew my car up. And I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, we he cut the exhaust off of my car so we can make it sound louder.
Oh, yeah.
And we burned a hole in my gas tank.
Because it's a plastic gas tank.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. He's like, can you price out a new one or something? I'm like, I think you got different issues, dude, because, and I was like, those are plastic gas tanks.
Yeah.
And I was like, just tell me exactly what happened. He's like, well, we cut it off about halfway down, and we didn't know. Well, we put this, AutoZone, turn down tip on it.
Yeah. I know that's what he's talking about.
And he's like, I think it got twisted, and it's just shooting the exhaust of the subframe. And the subframe got really hot and melted the top of the gas tank, and it's just spraying gas everywhere. I'm like, well, stop driving it.
Yeah, that'd be the first go-to. Yeah. Holy moly.
So I priced out a brand new gas tank. It's like $700 for that thing. So, but they got it fixed with a used one.
Good.
So,
Yeah.
Dude,
I don't even know what he did with the exhaust, but
it's probably still like it.
it's probably still. They just turned the tip.
This is yeah.
Oh, he was revving it up tonight.
How long ago was that?
A month.
Yeah,
good.
I remember
Yeah.
him telling me about it a couple weeks ago.
He took off his little red
His little cherry bomb.
Yeah, his cherry bomb.
Yeah,
Oh.
that's awesome. All right, well, let's get this thing started. Welcome to the I Wish I Knew Stuff podcast with Mark and Nalo. I am Nalo, and I've got Mark sitting over here.
Yep, still here.
He's still here,
Yep.
ladies and gentlemen.
I never leave.
Well, maybe that's, we have 3 million listens.
I don't even have a job. I sit in this chair until every other weekend. I just sit
Boom.
here.
Yeah. I pay him nothing, just so you know.
Hey, this room smells real bad because of me.
He pays me, though, so there's that. And then we have a special guest today. His name is Tate Haidle. Say hi, Tate.
What's up?
What's up? So I don't know even really what we're going to talk about. I've got some questions to ask Tate. He's been on some crazy adventures in the last 3 years, so we can jump right in on something like that. So Tate, what do you do? What do you do for a living right now?
As for right now, I'm in the middle of, I have my CDL, and I work for my dad's company. They're a cattle feed distribution company here in Billings. And so I deliver cattle feed from place to place in Montana, Wyoming, North Dakota, and Nebraska.
Dope.
And so then here started the process as of this last month to become a counselor. And so
Nice.
the process of getting my CEUs and certificates.
Are you just making up letters?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
I'm going to get my ABC.
The ABC,
and
the
DEF.
HIU. Yeah, and so I started that process. And so
What kind of
that'll be-
counseling?
I'm going into I really want to be a family therapist and marriage counselor.
Oh.
And so so that doing it through a school here this next year in Indiana, and then I have a mentor that's down in Texas that I'm getting all my certificates and stuff from. So
Sweet.
yeah.
So that kind of counselor, would you work at a church or you work at like an organization? Or
That is pretty diverse for what I want to do. I know that I'll be always involved with young kids.
Yeah.
I was an intern with CLDI here this last year on the south side of Billings, and so just being big brothers to young kids and just being able to have a background and also a legal place to where I could be with them at school or again be just involved with their families on a more legal basis. And so yeah.
That feels good.
Yeah.
Doing stuff like that for sure. Yeah, I'm not surprised. You're definitely the right kind of guy to be in a profession like that. So that's really cool. Really,
Not
really
creepy
cool.
like me.
Yeah.
Hey, kids.
So how do you know us? How do you know Mark and Nalo?
Originally from Emmanuel Baptist in Billings church, and I also saw you guys around at the car scene. But I see Mark pretty often, and then I see you every once in a while still. So
Yeah.
B-Dubs is also a local
The
place.
hangout
Yeah.
spot.
Yeah,
We do live in Billings.
Yeah.
There's one place to hang out, Buffalo Wild Wings.
the B-Dubs.
Yeah, for sure. What a great place that serves just very healthy, just good food for everyone.
Ask
Family restaurant.
Makes you feel great after you eat it, too.
Yeah. Oh, it's a
I'm
cleanse.
really glad I ate that.
It's a cleanse, you know. 'Cause-
A special cleanse.
yeah, I mean, you can go eat salads every day, or you can go eat Buffalo Wild Wings and get cleaned right out.
Yeah, clean out your
That's
body.
Pretty much how it goes.
Yeah, your body just yells, "Get it out!" as fast as you possibly can.
For sure.
Get this demon out of me.
Well, that's awesome. So, you see Mark every week doing youth group stuff, right?
Yep.
You guys hang out.
Every week
Do-
except this week.
Yeah, I was not there this week.
True. Yeah, you're on a worship team.
Yeah, I was.
That's awesome.
Is.
I was. I'm not anymore.
I got
today
fired
today
tonight.
was called off.
Fired today.
He's like, get out.
Oh, that's great. Well, that's cool. So, I mean, seriously, 3 years ago, is it 3 years
Yeah,
that this whole thing went down?
It was just over 3 years when the mess all started.
So you tell me if my story is straight here.
Okay.
You went on like this summer camp adventure traveling thing, right? Am I right about that?
Yeah,
And this was like right after that because do you think maybe some of this stuff was because of this, or?
yeah.
So
no.
tell me a little bit about that first. So like just generally what was that you did?
So, to set up, the 3 years was, I got the opportunity to be a logistics manager for a coffee tour. And so the coffee tour is where we just served coffee in the middle of fields at concert festivals all around the nation. And so there was a team of 30 baristas and a logistics team. And so we traveled mostly in the Midwest to where we were serving coffee out in the middle of big festivals, whether that be Christian country, we had indie. And so we were all over the place in the Midwest. And so that's
like a
how
coffee truck?
we had two 26-foot trucks, a refrigerator truck, and a bunch of sedans on the move. And so we did all of our, except while we were on the move, we did all of our sleeping in tents in the middle of fields.
Cool.
Wherever we were at. So,
Nice.
yeah.
That sounds like an adventure for sure.
Yes, it was. That's just the start of it. Yeah.
Well, okay. So, I mean, you had a big adventure there. You came back. It was fun. And then you started having some sort of an ailment? Or tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I knew on the way back there was something up. We were on our way back in Omaha, Kansas, or Omaha, Nebraska. And so we had our last stop there, and there was a Alt J concert, and I knew something was up is when I decided that I didn't want to go to an Alt J concert just to sleep. And it's like either I was really tired or something else was going on. And so previously in my life I had mono, and so I kind of knew there was like a fatigue kind of setting in, and on that drive home from Omaha back to Billings, there was a few signs of just fogginess, and even just where communication was starting to get weird and funky. And so on the way home, got down to Billings, and I tried unloading and getting everything organized back at our warehouse, and it was just kind of collapsing. It was like I have to go home and sleep. And at that time I was in the transition of where I was at my parents' place in the basement for a little while, and I just camped out there for 2 weeks and knew something was up because I didn't come out of that basement.
What kind of how would you describe to me how tired this is?
So
I want to be able to understand how tired you actually were.
So I was at that point where I was awake for maybe 2 to 3 hours a day for the first 3 weeks. So I was at that point where I would wake up for food, say hello to whoever was at the house. There's a couple friends after the tour that were there for a while, and I felt like the start of a wake coma again, where I would peek at people for a little bit, but then I'd go right back to sleep. And so it was just one of those. I was just mentally fatigued at the point where I didn't want anything to do but sleep. I mean, that was what my go-to. My brain and my body was like, I don't want anything else. I just want to sleep. Maybe have a little bit of food, but just sleep.
You're making me yawn.
I remember Cade would tell me, we'd ask about you, and he'd be like, oh, he came upstairs, said hi, and and he went back to bed.
Yeah.
What? He just sleeps all day? He's like, yeah, he's up an hour or two. He'll say something and eat, go to the bathroom, and goes back to bed.
So,
all right.
Yeah, his attitude about this was really weird to me, because he was he would tell us yeah, we really need to pray for Tate because he's doing this thing, he's got these diseases, and he could die.
Yeah,
but it's crazy. It's so crazy. He just sleeps, and then he's like, hey, guess what? I did this, and he just would go off on something else, and I'm like, okay.
You're like, wait a second, you said somebody could die, and then you're all of a sudden it's like, oh, that was cool to see him today. So
tell me about that.
Yeah, so for those of you that what happened specifically is here it was 3 weeks after we got done from the tour back at home. My parents were like, yeah, no, we definitely have to take you to the doctors. There's not even a choice. And so went there. I'm thankful for my home doc, and we did a kind of a panel because in the Midwest that year there was a lot of rain, and so because of that, a lot of mosquitoes, a lot of ticks, and that's where I got both of my things. So I got both Rocky Mountain spotted fever, which is a bacterial from a tick, and then West Nile, which is a virus from a mosquito. And so we found that out. It was that whole interaction with the doctor was hilarious because again, he took the panel, and we get a call 2 weeks later saying, hey, we found out that you have West Nile. Again, we'll see you here this next week. We'll set an appointment for you. And it was like, all right. And then 2 days later, get another call say, hey, you have Rocky Mountain spotted fever. You're like, I just got a call 2 days ago that had West Nile, and you're like, oh, we'll see you tomorrow. And so it was one of those things where all of a sudden,
we know.
Yeah, and so it was the appointment that was set, it was incredibly close afterwards, and so it was one of those where it was the one being a virus, one being a bacteria, where you have to fight the Rocky Mountain spotted fever with antibodies, and just something just to flush out of your system because it's bacteria. But if you take antibiotics, it takes out all the good antibodies in your system also to fight the West Nile. And so they were wanting to make sure, saying, okay, you're gonna have to we have to make sure that your body is responding to both of them, because we don't want to just all of a sudden kill all the good bacteria if you don't have Rocky Mountain spotted fever and just feed the way for West Nile just to devour on your system. And so yeah, sure enough, there's another test, and the antibodies were both spiked up, and that's where the whole mayhem began. And so it was one of those things that's so rare where we were like, what do we expect from this? And it was at that point where I was having weird neurological, where I couldn't hardly communicate with my parents. That was super frustrating, even just to describe what was going on, and even just why I was so tired. There was just a communication barrier where I had a hard time just talking. And it was frustrating.
So give me kind of an idea of Rocky Mountain spotted fever. Before this, I'd never even heard of it.
Yeah.
So I still don't even know what it is. Like, what the heck is Rocky Mountain spotted fever?
So it's a bacteria that comes. It's something that is traded from a tick. It's in 2% of ticks, but if you get bit by it and your body's susceptible, because I mean from the summer before, since my body had been pushed to its limits, my immune system was on a recovery stage, and it didn't have its immune system. It wasn't built up to where it could defend itself against it, and so it was susceptible to my system, and so.
Frickin' dogs.
Okay.
And we're back.
So, yeah, I had to pause it because my dog was barking. Yeah, so you were telling me about Rocky Mountain spotted fever.
Yeah.
I don't know where you left off because we paused for a few minutes there. But okay,
I
cool.
got you.
He didn't forget.
He didn't forget.
So the effects of it is it attacks your brain, your neurological and your neurological system, and your liver. And so with that, it was kind of this more aggressive than a virus. And so with it being bacterial, it's one of those that it really when we got diagnosed with both, like when we were taking a look at both of them together, is that they wanted to make sure that was cleared out of my system the quickest. And so that has.
So they were trying to fight the Rocky Mountain spotted fever before. I mean, not
more
aggressively, before, but more aggressively than the West Nile.
And so just because the way bacterial infections work compared to just viruses, because viruses you can have like a cold, but this one was a specific type to West Nile, which was that attacks your neurological system and your immune system. And so that with how that works is with bacterial, it's like it feasts. That's the best way of kind of thinking about it, is that it's not something that just attacks and kind of takes over. It's one of those that it wants to just take over and eat. And so that, for example, I had somebody give me a call here about 5-6 weeks back, and so there was a 70-year-old man that was down in Utah that they were just looking for people that had gone through it before, and so he had both of them at the same time. And there's very few of us that.
I was going to say, like how many? I mean, there can't be that many people that have had Rocky Mountain spotted fever.
When we were taking a look at that at the very beginning, there was only 3 people that we could find, and whether that be for the few short years or articles about it, and let's say the odds wasn't great, and what kind of made it the evidence of it being really bad known was that the 2 of them had died within 2 weeks.
Okay.
And so it was one of those where they had it, and thankfully my system was healthy enough that it was able just to kind of block and make it to where there wasn't a lot of damage right away. And so, but with this guy,
so what you're trying to say is if Mark or Nalo were to get this, we'd be dead.
I'd have been done.
Freaking die.
Something.
Instantly.
So
insta-kill.
And so it's with this guy that's down in Utah. He has where he can't even move. He could barely move his left arm, and he's paralyzed on the left part of his face, and he has just excruciating pain to where I had for about 6 months' time, is where your body just aches and is a painful. It's almost like if you sit on your butt on a hard chair for like 4 days. Just kind of put that as that. That's kind of what it feels like all over your body.
So was it the bacteria or the virus that did that to him?
So it probably was the bacterial, and so that one does with brain function with his, and so with how it connects with the neural. I gotta know the specifics with that, and they don't know really the specifics of which one did the damage. But again, if you can get to the point to where your body can start healing from it, you're already ahead of the curve. And so for him, he was an active 70-year-old guy, and so so where he's at that point where he's doing okay too. So, but that's only the start of the story with that is just since it's a virus, and where we killed the bacteria, is that it allowed West Nile to kind of run rampant in my body. And so over the next 8 months, I on average slept 18 to 20 hours a day. My body, I weighed 206 before the summer and 6.5% body fat, good condition, and within 2.5 months I was down to 167. And so where it just ate up my muscle. Again, one of the things that you crave during the first couple of months is protein, just meats. That's the same guy that was down in Utah. He's like, why do I crave meat all the time? And it's just like your body it needs substance to kind of, I don't know the specifics of that, but it just needs that just to kind of get through and just to function. And so from that point on, I formed a chronic form of hives. I again the communication and just the whatever was going on in my brain there, it was kind of lonely, and it was one of those, it was just really hard to sit and communicate with even just your parents. And so did a lot of internal thinking and internal searching during that time, because I physically was made to rest, and I was also it was one of those things where my heart was at a place where all the questions that I didn't know came to the surface and were allowed to be asked.
Huh.
And so it was good. Yeah, that in and of itself was, that was a whole journey in and of itself.
So I wanted to ask you a question about this like hives thing, because I remember hearing about how like you would just like go into the sun and get these hives or something like that, and it reminded me of that. What's that movie where the guy's allergic to the sunlight?
Oh, the bench warmers.
Bench warmers. Oh,
So,
yeah.
like this is the picture that I had. Kate's telling me like, oh yeah,
With,
he
like, a
went out to the
baseball
sun, and he's like trying to fight the sun with a sword. You know, this is kind of like the picture I had in my mind. Like, oh yeah, Tate, he can't go out in the sun.
Yeah, the family has to bring an umbrella wherever I go.
Yeah, and I picture you just like, putting on the sunglasses, wearing like a bandana around your face. Or I don't know. So, yeah, tell me how that. I mean, is that realistic or what?
No, well, I was at that point for a while, for a good, I would say, from about 6 months down the road for about 12 months after that point. It was at that I'd be unloading the dishwasher. I could go out into the sun, or if the room temperature got above 70 degrees, I'd break out in hives. And so it was not one of those where it was like a tickle hive. It was painful. There was like red dots all over the place, and it felt like I was just getting poked by needles, and it was just incredibly painful. Where sometimes I'd just shiver. And so during the wintertime, I would literally go outside and just stand shirtless out in the middle of the snow, and just to help cool off. And so it was that by far was the weirdest. I mean, that was probably the reason why I woke up from sleeping most of the time, is because I had hives, and it was just my body was like, it's time to wake up because you're really uncomfortable.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah,
that's just insane. So, is that about the time where you like started doing some cryotherapy?
Yeah. So it was about 16 months down the road where we started doing cryotherapy.
I've always wanted to, we talked about that before. I've always wanted to try it.
Yeah. So this all started in 2015, and so when we started really trying out new things, it was at the winter of 2016 and the beginning of 2017. And so this was in February of 2017 that we heard about cryotherapy, and that there's something here in Billings and so literally they stick you in a tube, put you in dry cold, which is, it goes down to like negative 250 degrees or something like that.
Sounds awesome.
And so it was one of those things, it's trying to help jumpstart your system. And so I had a lot of inflammation in my body, and so they were just trying in any way just to try to kind of hiccup my system so it can wake up. And so yeah, I did that. I think it was about a half dozen times, and that was awesome. Actually, for anybody that is in athletics, or again just dealing with inflammation, or just needs a fun try, it's worth it. It's a trip.
Dude, it sounds crazy. I can't imagine standing in.
I feel like Han Solo.
Yeah, 270 degrees. Like you're just getting frozen in carbonate. Like,
yeah, it's just like all of a sudden, they put you in a tube, and the only thing is sticking out is your head.
Yeah, it sounds so nuts.
Yeah,
but so it helped.
It was one of those where it wasn't at that point where it didn't get rid of the hives. It was actually a weird process, because anything that would stimulate my hives would make me really tired. And so even in the process of that, I felt exhausted after even just putting myself in the tube and going through that, and coming out. Like whatever happened is just when my body was trying to jumpstart itself with energy, it actually was almost like counteracting what we were trying to do. And so it helped with the hives end a little bit, but my energy actually plummeted even more in the midst of that time. So we're like, well, it was a great, again, if you have to get rid of inflammation through external ways, that was a great way of trying it out. And so, but yeah, no, we did it just for once a week for 6 weeks, and then we were done after that. But
so where was the turning point really where you knew that you could start focusing on the West Nile part? I don't even really know what West Nile is either. I know you get it from mosquitoes, and mosquitoes suck.
Yeah, so it's like any cold, except you just have to. So through the whole process, we had to just make sure that I was eating enough, drinking enough, and using anything that was external that your body would use for nutrients and ways just to fighting a virus, just to get on top of it. Any of those that's what was diligent. And so the effects of whatever was going on lasted. I mean, it felt like for a good 8 months, I felt like a toddler. I mean, I was at that it didn't feel till after that point where I actually could start doing a few things that I enjoyed. But after that point, it started again after 8 months. My body, there's a few things every once in a while where I can go out and go for a run.
Like, could you sit and watch TV, or your body just wanted to sleep?
Yeah, well, there was a few things. I mean, I did some reading during that time. I felt more like a fly on the wall. I was just an observer. So if I was watching TV, or if I was every once in a while, I'd play a game called League of Legends, just because it's just pastime sometimes, and it was just a thing that helped stimulate even just in the simple ways of strategy. And so just to get the mind thinking and
sure,
and just
so
anytime with board games,
your brain,
yeah.
So like you kind of can't give up.
Yes, it was just one of those. Yeah, just finding anything that was in the home just for enjoyment.
Math.
Yeah, I mean, just the simple things. And so, I did a lot of binge watching Netflix. That was, again, I got to watch a lot of Netflix shows. And so, but yeah.
For sure, yeah. That sounds like, man, you'd probably run out of stuff. I mean, if you're just sitting doing that, I mean,
again,
I feel like you'd have to have Netflix and Hulu and Amazon and
I watched everything
DVDs.
on Netflix.
YouTube. I watched every YouTube video. Yeah, that would be crazy.
Yeah, so where you just feel like you're just trying to get time to pass.
That's
and
nuts.
So, yeah,
it would be so, like you said, it felt lonely. Like I mean, like a fly on the wall.
Yeah.
Everyone's out doing something, they're living their lives, and like you can't control it. You have to be there, just chill and resting, and you just don't want to be. So
yeah.
That's so insane to be in that situation.
Yeah, and so even like my very first time where I felt like I could actually do something a year down the road was, again, I got the opportunity to try to do trim work for my grandparents' farm in eastern Montana, and even just working an hour a day was just over the top, and I was just like, even that's ridiculous in and of itself. It's like I couldn't do, again, simple trim work for windows and doors without getting absolutely crapped out a year down the road. And so
that's got to make it just feel terrible.
Well, it was definitely frustrating.
Yeah,
to say the least. Again, when you're feel like you're a man one year, and all of a sudden you get sent back to your, you can compare yourself to your 2-year-old cousin.
Like you watch Little Einstein.
Yeah, immediately you start browsing through those things with Netflix, and you're like, "Well, I've never seen this kid's show before."
Yeah, I am a toddler, so I might as well watch it.
I saw that there's new Dora the Explorers, and yeah, but no, probably when I started knowing that things were starting to turn around a little bit was got the opportunity to take a family trip down to Florida. And for the first time, I didn't have, again, it was going to be hot down there. And so it was, for the first time, I didn't have hives. And it was about 2 weeks before that we went down there. There was like, the things were starting to subside kind of. And so after that point, I mean, they started flashing back and forth. But that was at the point where I didn't have to worry when I was in the hot, muggy weather that I had hives, which was a huge thing.
Sure.
And so when we knew that, it's like,
terrible,
hey,
anyway.
Yeah. So we were like, hey, something is, again, my body's getting on top of something. And so that was great. But it was during that time too. There were so many people that came alongside my family, me, and even just where I went outside of my house 6 times on purpose in 8 months for that first 8 months, and so outside of doctor's appointments, and so it was just one of those where when you feel cooped up, but all of a sudden when you have even just with the church family and close friends where they would come over and just, it meant the world just for them to sit down and just talk with me for a half an hour, or just even just sit on the couch, being in the midst, just having them there was a huge thing. And so, yeah, for anybody that I haven't yet said thank you, for anybody that I keep coming across is like, man, I seek those people out. And so,
well, here's a weird question. What if, like, did you notice anybody that you thought maybe would be supportive that wasn't supportive? I mean, you don't have to like be specific, obviously, but I mean,
yeah, I've
gone through things in my life where, like, I thought, yeah, this is a tough thing, and I thought somebody would be supportive where I could lean on them or something, and they were like either totally didn't care or they were the opposite, and they thought that, negative things instead of positive things. So I mean, was there anything like that going on?
I can't even think of anybody. I mean, there was a few relationships before that summer that, just because of my personal life, that were a little more, again, they just weren't healthy, and so, but they were broken off before. Well, I wouldn't say broken off, but they were just wasn't a daily part of my life, even in the midst of that summer. That were no longer there while I was sick, and so, but in the midst of the sickness and all the other relationships, there was not. I can't think of anybody that wasn't supportive in the midst of that, which is something I'm incredibly thankful for. And so that was another thing that was weird, is because of the situation. There was a lot of times people would ask to come, and I was not wanting. Again, I was at the point where I couldn't take people without just feeling absolutely drained. And so that actually, there was a lot more people that were understanding with the harsh circumstances, and even with sending letters. I had old ladies from Eastern Montana I had never met before sent me quilt blankets saying, "Hey, we're thinking about you. Here's a prayer blanket." And so, I mean, just those little things that from the whole community that was around me, that it's like, cool. I'm very thankful for the people that had been my friends and that were consistently that.
So how does this, tell me how this really affected your close family around you, like your brothers, your sister, your parents,
Talk about a funny dynamic. Actually, our parents and I, we got to actually share that story here this last weekend in our parents' backyard on just some of the things relationally that we went through. And again, the first 2 months were kind of awkward, because it was one of those points where they didn't know what specifically was going on. So, I mean, even like the random questions of like, is he doing drugs, or is he an alcoholic, secret alcoholic? Why is all of a sudden he in the middle of the basement?
Get him out of here.
And where he's not. Again, so we went through a first initial kind of weird, what's going on here kind of a thing. And so
I thought we knew you.
Yeah. And one of my favorite stories, specifically when it kind of comes down to the relationship specifically between me and my mom, there was a pattern where, again, when I initially got sick, then we found out what the sicknesses were, and then that became kind of a realization moment for, this is a serious thing. And so it was one of those where it cleared out the waters of confusion of saying, hey, I was at that point where I was a young kid where I was really good at deception and making up stuff, and where they wouldn't be surprised if I was just so sick of life from that previous year that I would like just camped out and made any excuse just to be there and not have to go back to regular life.
Sure.
Like that was an actual possibility that they were like, this could be that. And so when all of a sudden that possibility got shoved out of the water, was it created good questions to ask of, again, what are some of the pains that we're feeling between us now that everything is cleared out of the water?
Yeah.
And so there's one interaction that was my favorite, and I was in Eastern Montana at that time when I was doing trim work. My parents came over there. We were going to do hunting in October. Again, I was just going to do ride-alongs, but they were going to do hunting, and they came, and my mom saw that I didn't get the trim work done, and so she comes up to this upstairs again. I already had done trim work earlier that day, and she just comes up and says, "Hey, you should come back downstairs and finish the trim work." And I was like, I already tried for today, and it's just like at a point in my life where I was actually okay being where I was at. Yeah. And I know that there was a process of healing that God had me here for a reason, that there were so many things that He was up to in my heart that is like, I'm okay being here. And so she came up here and was like, "No, I'm not coming down." She's like, "Well, I'll give you 15 more minutes," and goes back downstairs. So the typical mom thing to say. And then so she comes back up, and in the midst of that, it's like, how do I tell her that, again, me being her sick child, I'm okay with where I'm at? And
it's almost like she was in denial.
Yeah. And so there's
my kid's not that sick.
Again, I can't imagine what that's like, seeing your adult child that, again, come and literally be a toddler.
You're an adult toddler.
Yeah, exactly. yeah, and that I would be much more into that category. But in the midst of that, just having, again, your kid be back at your home being helpless in that way, and to where he all of a sudden says to you that, again, I'm okay with where I'm at. And that process of even that if I'm like this, or if I had died, that I was okay with that.
Yeah.
And so it was one of those that I told her that when she came back up, and she's like, I'm not okay with this. And she like stormed away.
Get down there.
She went out of the room but she wasn't angry at me. And so the cool thing is over the next couple months after that point, we got to sit and talk about that. There was even like fears of losing loved ones.
Yeah.
And even that sometimes we actually attach our identity onto other people. And so when we almost, it is weird that it exposed that we sometimes use people like drugs, that we actually once, again, it's like an addiction. It's like if I don't have you and you're gone, I literally go through all the withdrawals of like me being on cocaine.
Sure.
And so it's interesting is that what is a healthy, not just relationship, but even just in this place of even going through a hard time, how do you deal with, even from son to child to even whatever circumstance that comes along, is how do you deal with even just the hardness and the hard circumstances of life with sickness or with losing a loved one. And so it was a great time relationally after. I mean, there were so many things that our parents, or my parents and we just got to sit and talk through and just have hearts to hearts. And so because of that, I was close with my parents beforehand, and was always just be able to be transparent with them and ask them questions. There were people that I always counted as close, but after that point, there's a deepness and a connection that, I mean, I would call them not just my parents, but even my closest friend.
Sure.
And so, yeah.
Yeah, that would be I can't even, while you were saying that, I was trying to imagine like my own kids, if they were so sick, and going through these things. Especially my son's 13, so he fakes ailments now. Like he's that little Tate that you were describing.
You're trying to get out of something.
Yeah.
Whether that be school or...
Pretty much every morning, I don't feel good. Nope. I don't care.
You just don't want to get out of bed.
Yep. I don't care. So, yeah, at that point, having been used to that or growing up with that, even if it wasn't all the time, there's got to be a little piece of you that thinks, like, maybe.
The funny thing is, I almost expected me at the very start of that. I almost thought that's what I was doing to myself.
Sure.
Because there was actually, again, just because of the circumstances before that summer, there were just a few things that, again, and I had a relationship go through where it was close to where, engagement was in the conversation to then being a logistics manager, and all of a sudden that tour actually, it went decently well, but we heard that at the end of it that we weren't going to have financial for the rest of it. So again, pretty much being fired from a job that you love to maybe the relationship, and then also you being at trashy health on the way back. And I was like, yeah, I'm just done. And so I almost felt like, again, there was a possibility am I doing this? Yeah, exactly. So there's that possibility. Was I really just looking for an excuse just to be dormant
to do
again?
Nothing.
And so, yeah.
Sure. But, yeah, I mean, you probably had to go through that, and then once you got that realization, you're just, maybe that's where you came to the point to where you're just like, I'm okay with being like this because this is real. This is me.
It was.
I don't have a choice right now.
It was funny because even like when we got the diagnosis, it was a clarity for my parents, but it was almost a release on my soul. I'm like, oh great, I'm not actually making this up, and just,
I'm not crazy.
I'm not. Yeah, it was kind of a weird transition there. It was like I actually almost had I was excited to get that because I'm like, I'm not crazy. I'm like, this is great.
It's on paper.
Yeah, it's on paper. So
they tested my blood. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's so crazy. I can't imagine. I've grown up my entire life having asthma, so I know the ups and downs of having an ailment that you can't control. But I can't imagine being so tired and just uncontrollably helpless. So that's what intrigued me about this story, is that it's just, I've been sick. I've been so sick that I thought I was dying, and then I've had asthma attacks where I've been in the hospital and things like that, but I'm like, at the same time, what the heck is going on?
I had my own leap year except with sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was strange because even when you're in the midst of it, you feel like you're wasting your year away, and you're like, again, just the things that you think through during that time is like, again, you being like, would it be better if I just would just sleep through this whole thing and not have to wake up and deal with the things that are going in my heart, or again my relationships that I've got in front of me, or having to deal with me being a toddler back at my parents. Or
did you ever think you were dreaming?
Oh man, I did have, because of that. It was one of those, is I actually couldn't remember most of my dreams during that time. It was a weird state of sleeping where again, no, I didn't feel like I mean I have to clarify. There were sometimes I did wake up feeling like I was so foggy-headed, I didn't know. Yeah, again, if this was because it felt like I was literally waking out of a coma, and I even just had how my parents described it. It seemed like I would like gasp and like take a deep breath and like open up my eyes wide to like take in everything. And there's like sometimes I would sleep for. There's one time I literally slept 26 hours straight, and so literally when that happens, it's like your body's like resensoring to everything, and so it's like I felt like, yeah, it was like the biggest fog. It wasn't like a dream, but it just felt like that whole year was a fog.
Did you ever do anything funny, like sleepwalk or anything?
No, there's very. I just slept so hard.
Did
I
you
mean,
have nightmares?
I
or
had.
anything?
I think
Did you just have weird dreams and stuff?
I couldn't remember them if I did. I mean, there was a few of them that I do remember, but I get the craziest things that I would have is I learned every position you could sleep because I wouldn't like move while I was sleeping. I would just sleep in the same position like for hours and hours on end. It's like I learned so many places you can have numb parts of your body because you sleep in the same place for like hours and hours on end.
Yeah,
So
I've never laid
that's
in
probably
this
my
position
adventure.
for 20 hours before.
Yeah, that was like my adventure for a little while. It's like figuring out in different ways how your shoulder, your head, or your butt, or your legs can get numb from just sleeping in the same position.
That sounds so
I know,
crazy.
this is weird.
I feel like I can't sleep in the same position for an hour, and I wake up and I'm like, "Ah, my back," and then
Yeah.
I can't imagine doing that for 20 hours straight.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
But it was a really strange reality actually coming out of it, especially at that 2-year mark where I started coming back to life, is that the people around me changed.
Yeah.
And it was like there was like a time lapse between when I was sick and then all of a sudden when I was coming back to like the living world. It's even like with my brother Trey, who I'm really close with.
It's almost like you went off to a different country and
Yeah.
you came back and you saw people again.
And so it was like I almost had to like get to know him in certain areas.
Weird.
Like we had
Your own
like,
brother.
Yeah, it was like him and I have. I mean, you've seen me and him together before, where we were always really close. But there was like certain things that we. It was specifically on my end. It just felt like there was I had missed certain parts of his life that used to we'd be in consistent communication with. But I
Yeah.
just was like it was hard.
You had to like jumpstart the inside jokes again.
Again, it's like it was a whole system of that. It was strange. That part of it was you talk about how I judge time was on other people's timeline and how they their growth, how they perceived life, and I couldn't do it off mine because I was literally in a coma. It felt like, but it was cool to see. It was cool to see even this people's growth, and like if you could take yourself out of a picture for 2 years and then put yourself back in it. It was cool to see that from an outside perspective, but even like with the people that you're really close with, and that was like getting to know them again. And so yeah,
That's kind of neat. So how are you doing now? Like give us like a picture of what this Rocky Mountain Spotted Fever in West Nile is like currently in September of 2018.
I've been super fortunate. So this is about 3 months or 3 years and a few months down the road from the original diagnosis, and I'm at that point where again I haven't had hives for about 6 months. The last doctor's appointment that I went to, I mean I'm off all medications. Where he was surprised. I mean, they were expecting about a 7-year recovery just to get back to normal life and having a sustainable job. And again, 3 years down the road, where I'm to where they would expect 7 years, and so that has been super encouraging. And so just to be able to be back at life, I mean, even just here telling the story, it's been that part of it has been super fun.
What do you attribute that to? I mean, to being young, your diet, lifestyle change, is this spiritual? What is this?
Oh, there's that's a whole nother can of worms. I would have to say that I probably didn't help my body very well during that process. I'm not gonna lie. During that summer on the tour, I picked up smoking and also did it for about 8 months down the road of when I was in the middle of the sickness. So I didn't help that process
For
at
sure,
all.
yeah.
And so, but there was a time in an interaction where God was able to capture my heart in a way that after that point, the effects, and even when we took blood work, the effects and the evidence of Rocky Mountain Spotted Fever almost disappeared. Like it was super interesting. Is where we had blood work for 3 times before that, where Rocky Mountain Spotted was caught in my system. My antibodies were up, and then after my time that I was in Eastern Montana, and God just talked to my heart, and I started learning to what does it mean to really be son, how He sees us as His son, and that in the midst of that, there was so much that I said, "All right, Lord, can you just show me?" And that I never thought faith. Again, faith is. There's been a lot of questions about it over the last couple of years, but that faith, again, comes from hearing. That's what it talks about in Romans 10:17. But that the beginning of Hebrews, it says that faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things unseen. And that in the midst of that time, he literally, again, there was some healing that happened where all of a sudden doctors couldn't explain why I was getting better, why all of a sudden my hives weren't quite as harsh, to the evidences of even just my communication started getting a lot better quickly. And so because of that, I think it all points back to my relationship with my father. And that's just been super neat. And so with God, and I couldn't attribute to myself. I couldn't attribute it to even just me sleeping really well for that year. I mean, there's very little
great attitude.
Yeah,
that's
again.
what happened.
And so there was so much that evolved around the months even after that point, where it just seemed like things reflected in my heart out physically in a way that was like I can't really explain. And so yeah, that's what I would attribute to just with my relationship with God and Him being faithful, and just me being a son and learning what does it mean to be a receiver, a container of this thing, and broadcaster of this thing called life and love and joy and peace and all of His fruits. And so yeah.
So what would you say that's different about you now? Like after this 3-year adventure, like what's the main difference between Tate before and Tate after?
Oh man, I was one of those that I was somebody that absorbed knowledge and relied on my knowledge about things really, really well. Whether that be through religion, whether that be through even just how I thought about things or political ways. There's so many things that I relied on my own knowledge of what I saw as good.
Okay.
Really well, and that after that point, it just made me realize how little I actually know in the grand scheme of all knowledge. I mean, there's so much out there. And so it's just, I think, as weird as it sounds, I think humility I'm saying it's okay to say I don't know.
Yeah.
And also it's just being at that point of saying, again, I'm not the brightest in the room. I don't have to be the greatest. Again, I can just be me in the center of wherever I'm at, and say, I'm just here. Again, I just want to observe, I want to learn, and I also just want to be in the midst of people and relationships and connect those. And so I think that is the biggest thing, is I don't feel like I'm chasing after doing good things really well. I'm much more concerned about relationship, connection, and just being in the midst of this world for whatever that looks like. And so yeah.
Cool. That's a cool new take on life, and just probably it feels a lot better to, I don't know, think that way and feel that way compared to be just, relying, like you said, relying on your knowledge and not really knowing which direction you're going, and it's almost like an arrogance to, feeling like life is, and then now you're like, man, I just didn't know. I just didn't know what was going on. So.
A lot of questions, and so it's been fun. I think out of all the things that has freed up is that I actually feel like I can just go and do things just as a human being, not having to do it for somebody or to do it to, just to please other people. That I just feel like that I'm learning what it means to be a human being in the midst of this world, as first as a son to my parents, as a sibling to my siblings, and also to friends, and as a child of how God sees me also. So yeah.
Cool. Well, you got a significant other?
Do I have a significant other?
That's a random question, but
let's just put it as I admire a select few, and so yeah. Again, there's nobody as of yet.
Aww.
So yeah.
Well, that's cool.
I know.
That's good.
Yeah.
Mark, what do you think? I mean, you just been listening,
just been
taking it all in.
Yeah, just listening, loving it. Not loving it, but wasn't there like a?
I love that you got Rocky Mountain spotted for you.
Yeah,
that's sick.
It. No,
that's sick, bro.
But wasn't there like a time where you kind of got better?
Yeah.
And then it kind of came back.
It kind of had so it was one of those things where I pushed, like, once I had a glimpse of like, hey, I can get back to regular life. I just pushed myself, like I
dove right back in.
I just dove right back in, and my body was like screaming at me after that point. It's like, no, I am not ready to go all the way back into life.
Was that after your Florida trip or something? Maybe.
So it was in between it was the summer of summer of 2016 into the winter of it was right before the cryotherapy stuff, and so it was one of those where, again, I started having teas of no more hives and stuff like that, and so I was just like, well, I'm just gonna get a job. I'm gonna see how far I can push myself, because I was one of those that I always loved, again, even just testing my physical limits for.
I don't think anybody would blame you. I mean, no. You'd been sleeping for 20 hours a day. Who would want to just continue doing that?
Yeah.
I love sleep, but I mean, come on now.
I
also love doing
I've had enough
things.
sleep for the next 5 years. I think I'm good.
I'm good.
Yeah.
I remember, like, we would see you like, oh,
It's like a tease.
yeah, look, it's Tate, he's back.
He's
and then
back.
and then he's gone for a couple more weeks or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, and then oh, never mind.
Yep.
Psych.
I remember seeing you, and I'm like, dang, his hair is long.
Dude,
Yeah.
yeah, he
the
was a
heck?
friggin' mountain man.
It was one of those things for like in that summer I was starting to grow my hair out a little bit, but by the time that next year came around, I had Jesus hair. I literally I got hired and even just to come do plays at churches to just be
Yeah.
a Jesus in the midst
I
of.
remember
I remember
that.
Emmanuel
I'm so
did that
tired,
with me.
but
There
I'll
was
do it.
there was a play downtown that they asked me to be. I mean, it was hilarious. It was hilarious. So,
Yeah, that's crazy.
yeah.
That's crazy. Well, I mean, I don't know. It's cool to hear your story. I don't know. It's encouraging. It's crazy. You know, it's.
You love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Again, never would ask somebody to go through that, but at the same time, very thankful to be on the other side.
Yeah, and that's the whole concept of what we're doing here is we want to know. I mean, we want to know everything. So
Wanna know
I mean,
stuff.
We learned about your ailments.
Yeah.
I like that word.
You
I
know,
just like
the Rocky Mountain Spotted Fever.
yes, the ailments and the ailments.
The ailments.
Yeah, so we learned about those, and I mean, I think I learned more about, just being encouraged and seeing you go through it, and that you're still like a happy-go-lucky person. And I mean, seriously, there's any number of people that could have gone through something like this, and they'd be down in a deep depression, and not being able to,
Yeah.
almost pull themselves up by their bootstraps, is probably what they're trying to do. But you had more faith, and you had good support, and you had lots of encouraging people around you, and it's cool that it's encouraging to know that people can come together and do that, and just help somebody that's just suffering with something.
Yeah.
So I think it's cool. It's fun to know about stuff like that.
It puts you on the perspective of also what you're looking for is to be a good friend and a brother to those that are also in need too. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's a mentality that I kind of live by is wherever there's poop, there could be a pony. So if you even and since I was a little child, that's how my parents would compare me to the mentality, and so I'm thankful that's still intact after everything.
Where there's poop, there could be a pony.
There's a pony.
Where there's poop, there's a pony.
For sure. So I don't know. I mean, like I think it's awesome. That's really cool. That's good. I'm glad that this happened to you. So
Yeah,
No,
exactly.
I mean,
I
like-
could be sitting right here, right now.
No.
If it hadn't happened, he wouldn't. be
No,
here right
man,
now.
that's a
Right.
whole nother Inception concept right there.
Dude, man, trust me, I've had conversations with myself before, like, man, that really sucked what I went through, but like, what if that didn't happen? Then,
Yeah.
like, what kind of a person really would I be? And I know that I went through that for a reason, and I
Yeah.
don't know. It's cool. So, I mean, you are who you are because of the things that happen in your life and the experiences you have and the people around you. So, I don't know.
Yeah, no, there was a quote that I actually just saw earlier today that was like, it's actually really good, is that adversity introduces you to the true man in you. And so that whatever you go through, it kind of exposes some of the things that are inside you, and again, because of it, are exposed, and because of it, purified. Yeah.
I preach integrity all the time.
Yeah.
Because it's one of my favorite things. And one of the things that I feel like tons of people just lack integrity. They just don't want to be the same person all the time. They're just different people to different other people. It doesn't matter who they're with, they're going to alter themselves to be that person that pleases them. And they just have no integrity. And so I don't know. I just love that. And I feel like that's kind of like what the adversity can do to you, is kind of, train you to be an integral person. So
You're talking about a crazy, again, side story here. Is I actually had a mentor of mine talk at a group here in town called Overflow back in 2014. It was in July.
yeah.
And talking about how, again, when you partner along God and ask Him to change to show Him how He sees you. Again, there's like a prayer that I had. I woke up at 4:30 in the middle of the morning a few days later, and I had this image burned in my head of that I was a piece of metal, and that I was supposed to be. It was in the middle of a purification process being cast into a fire, and that there's impurities that were in metal, and the only way that those come out to then make the metal pure is by casting it into a fire and allowing the heat to bring it to the surface so it could be scraped off.
Yeah.
And so that sometimes even with integrity we get that point where we just don't even face those, and because of that, we always are looking crippled. We're always broken. We're always in the midst of like we just don't care, and so we don't allow those things to be exposed by adversities, different things. And so you talk about. I almost asked. I literally made that a prayer in July of 2014, and a year later, I went through everything I went through. It's like wow, I almost kind of asked that on me, just saying, hey, these things that are inside me, Lord, you take them and you bring them out to the surface, and it's like wow, did that ever come to fruition?
It's like praying for patience.
Yeah, it's like
don't ever do that.
Don't do that. That's just the no-no. When you're asking to be, asking to be exposed and again to become more pure. Yeah, that's you could talk about getting crushed.
Yeah, I mean, when you were talking about that, and I'm like, I've watched a YouTube video, and the guy hammers the thing like 80 times.
Again, I did foraging when I was a young kid, so.
Yeah, you just told us the story of you getting hammered
80
times.
Literally.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
That's crazy. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's been super fun talking to you about this. And, I mean, probably one of our most legitimate podcasts.
I was going to say, this is probably the most legit one ever.
I mean, we'll sit and just BS about something so stupid.
Yeah, we're going to shoot up to like 12 million people listening.
That's good.
Well, I already did. The last 3 years of my life have just been a bunch of BSing for you guys. So it's just a story for you.
Yeah, this is what I love. Thanks for being on here because we appreciate it a lot, and I like talking to you. I've wanted, as soon as you mentioned that you were going to have that thing at your house where you're inviting people over, and I knew I couldn't come to that thing just because of my schedule, and I was like, I just gotta have them on. Yeah. I want to hear about it. I want to talk about it. So
yeah, well, I'm glad. This has been fun.
Boom.
I've enjoyed this a lot.
This is what we do. I mean, we podcast late at night. It's late. It's stupid. When we got energy drinks here, why?
Yeah.
Why? Brett showed up. He's not even on a mic.
Good.
And he gave us all energy drinks.
What else?
The support of staff.
Yeah, staff support.
He's like a roadie.
A groupie.
The shaking the head.
He could be your groupie.
Brett is definitely a groupie.
Cool. I'm hungry.
Are you?
Yep.
All right. Well,
all right.
It's been good. It's been real. It's been fun. This has been the I Wish I Knew Stuff podcast, and we've been talking with Tate Haidle, and he told us some sweet stories. So that's it.
Yep.
It was fun.
Yep.
Cool.
Good night.
Good night.
Shut up, Brett.
Huzzah.